opened up the rear deck lid. Just tons of smoke started pouring from it after they refired.
We got a problem around the racetrack. We got to call Kasey Kahne.
Scott Riggs has dropped a cylinder.
We think it might have dropped a valve or broke a valve spring and then dropped a valve or something like that.
Trouble, front straightaway. Elliott Sadler. Right front down.
Boy, that's a shocker. Kasey Kahne about to go a lap down.
A year ago, Kasey Kahne was 5th in points. Coming in today, 28th.
Talking about Evernham a little bit, his 2 cars brought back last year's nose selection to try to get these teams back on track, but right now they're really not going to know because they don't have anything to bring back home.
The 6th full-time season of Evernham Motorsports had the potential to be the team's best in franchise history, beginning with the cherry red number 9 car, the one you could not miss, driven by a young sensation by the name of Kasey Kahne. Ray Evernham always envisioned Bill Elliott's protege making a name for himself in NASCAR's Cup Series, but 2006 was the one where that dream played out in the real world. In that season, Kenny Francis helped Kasey Kahne shatter the glass ceiling for the Evernham team by winning 6 races, the most wins in a single season for an Evernham driver in team history. Kahne was the franchise face not only for Evernham Motorsports, but as well as Allstate Insurance, a company that bought plenty of airtime during that season to distinguish Kasey Kahne as NASCAR's Prince Charming. Failure to perform from Kasey Kahne would result in a lot more blood than usual. Although, to be fair, social media had yet to exist in 2006, so we'll never know if Kasey Kahne had a toxic fangirl army along the likes of the Ryan Blaney fans today. Raised only 2 hours north of the Evernham shop, Bahama, North Carolina, Scott Riggs would enter his 2nd full-time season in the Valvoline number 10. Despite failing to qualify for the season opening Daytona 500, Riggs did not find the NASCAR Cup Series rigged against him, putting together a season that would see him transfer into NASCAR's All-Star race and post 8 top 10 finishes. To many, this team was a dark horse contender for 2007 because you had Rodney Childers and the gates of success that he unlocked, particularly on the mile-and-a-half tracks which flooded every schedule of the 2000s. For Scott Riggs, a win, preferably at Charlotte where he led 124 laps in the 2 2006 points races, and a chase berth, they were not unobtainable goals for this season. Rounding out the 3-car team was a driver that used his pretty NASCAR paycheck to eat 3 servings of steak at Texas Roadhouse. True story. The main course of Elliott Sadler's 2006 season, however, was lame duck. Robert Yates Racing was overcooked beyond belief, and they could not even get their cars into the top 30 at the bigger tracks. And despite Elliott Sadler reminding the media at every corner he was not leaving Yates, guys, trust the process, he is not going anywhere, Sadler would end up opting out of his contract in July, replacing Jeremy Mayfield in the Evernham number 19. And finally, for Elliott Sadler, it was put up or shut up. He knew his excuses were thin considering the speed of the Evernham Dodges. To fit these expectations, Sadler spent the offseason working out, dropping down to 210 pounds, his lowest weight since his rookie season. The 31-year-old Virginian entered 2007 both mentally and physically prepared to win with his new team and new crew chief Josh Brown. As for Evernham, his offseason was spent looking for a new financial partner to ensure the long-term survival of his race team in this booming era for the series, especially as the car of tomorrow rose costs for the NASCAR Cup Series garage. Though, for the 2007 season at least, the increasing amount of Benjamin Franklins needed to compete would not cause the team to cease operations or see a decline in performance. Many Evernham employees would just need to increase their roles and responsibilities on the team. Rick Russell was promoted to team president in addition to his roles as general manager and chief financial officer. Dr. Eric Warren, Sammy John, and Mark McCardle would all become vice presidents in addition to the roles as technical director, competition director, and managing directors respectively. Kasey Kahne, Scott Riggs, and Elliott Sadler came to Daytona with hope, optimism, and provocative race cars that violated the NASCAR rulebook. Before Daytona 500 qualifying, the number 10 and number 19 teams would receive as many red flags as a Chinese parade, violating 3 sections of the NASCAR rulebook, including Section 20-2.1e, unapproved aerodynamic modification. Meanwhile, after qualifying, the 9 team would fail inspection for those same reasons, NASCAR's Jim Hunter stating there were holes where it was supposed to be sealed. And there's no sugarcoating it here, guys. The result of such an infraction would be a gut punch to the Evernham Motorsports team. Rodney Childers and Josh Brown would get suspended for 2 races and fined $25,000 each. Kenny Francis would get an even harsher penalty, getting a 4-race suspension and losing $50,000. However, losing this kind of big money, I know it's insane, this type of dollar value that is out of this team, but that was the least of their worries with the plunge they took in the points. No points races had been run yet. Still, Scott Riggs and Elliott Sadler sat at negative 25 points and Kasey Kahne was at negative 50. These totals also counted on the owner points side and put them in a deficit to stay inside the top 35, also known as the NASCAR safe zone from going home. Such a penalty in its severity would force Ray Evernham to become the co-crew chief of Elliott Sadler's number 19, along with car director Kirk Almquist. Kasey Kahne's engineer, Keith Rodden, would step up to be the crew chief for the number 9, and Kevin Kidd would call the shots for Scott Riggs. This would have to be a team effort on all frontiers to carry out the plans set by the team directors now that they were watching the Great American Race from their living room couch with an ice-cold Bud Light. Despite being short-staffed and short-minded, Ray Evernham and Evernham Motorsports would overachieve in front of a national audience. Elliott Sadler and Kasey Kahne finished a respectable 6th and 7th, respectively. Scott Riggs, unfortunately, wouldn't fare as good, overshooting his pit box, which led to a transmission breaking midway through the race, salvaging a 37th place finish after a few heavyweights such as Kurt Busch and Tony Stewart DNF'd out of the race. Evernham Motorsports, for the most part, pulled a rabbit out of a ball cap. They would need more of that miracle whip in the appeals process, but for a race team sponsored by Hellmann's in NASCAR's Busch Series, that would not happen. On March 5th, 2007, the 9 teams penalty was upheld through a majority vote by the National Stock Car Racing Commission, determining the actions in Daytona were premeditated and intentional. Kasey Kahne would lose Kenny Francis for the next 3 races, winning the Polo Award for Race 3 at Las Vegas, but other than that, Kasey Kahne's performance left his devoted army as dry as the Nevada desert. That same weekend, Kahne's pole-winning car stepped out from him and slid up the racetrack, still far from the most disastrous slide in McDonald's NASCAR history. A 35th place finish that was the quarter-pounder sandwich between 3 finishes, 35th or worse. Auto Club due to an engine issue, and Atlanta after getting collected in a 4-car crash with David Ruderman, Greg Biffle, and Brian Vickers. A 19th place finish at Bristol for race 5 bailed out the 2006 Chaser from having to go through the pain of qualifying on time. Meanwhile, Kenny Francis returned for race number 6, but the 9 team proved to be a team best fitted for the NHRA drag strip rather than the NASCAR oval. Kasey Kahne had some rather fast cars in time trials, but when it came down to the end of the race, the speed was just not there. In 6 of the next 7 races, Kasey Kahne finished 20th or worse. The one exception, Talladega. Included in this abysmal stretch was his championship defense of the Coca-Cola 600. It went about as good as a liter of Coke and a 1-ounce pack of Mentos, never cracking the top 10 before an untimely pit cycle trapped him multiple laps down, sealing his fate by smacking the wall like a flapjack to end his competitive chances of winning the race. 12 races in, Kasey Kahne was ranked 32nd in the NASCAR Cup Series points. Complimentary Krispy Kreme donuts were not a thing in the Monday morning meetings, I can tell you that. The biggest NASCAR chase rally after 12 races belonged to Matt Kenseth in 2005, who ended up rallying from 23rd to compete for the championship as the number 8 seed. So basically, the number 9 team with 2/3 of the season left was already eliminated from championship contention. That is a horrible, horrible state to be in. Kasey Kahne's number 9 team was not the only fault in Evernham's star. The number 10 team of Scott Riggs chose not to appeal their penalty and opted just to fight through the pain. Not an easy thing to do when you don't have one of the best crew chiefs in the NASCAR Cup Series there to set up your race cars. The performance of the Scott Riggs machine at Auto Club proved just that. Just 7 laps into race number 2 of the season, Riggs got loose, tried to correct, and was knocked up like an arcade pinball by the safer barrier. Like Kahne, Riggs was brilliant in qualifying once Childers returned. It was putting together a 400 and sometimes 500 mile race that really did this team in. Atlanta, a 6th place qualifying effort, turned into a 43rd place finish when the Stanley sponsored machine went down a cylinder midway through the race. Bristol, Riggs had a good car. running in the 4th position before the right front tire went flat on the patriotic Valvoline Dodge, forcing him to pit under green, where the pain would be amplified even more as he would get busted for speeding. Finishing 31st in that race would solidify Scott Riggs and the number 10 team as a go-or-go-home team, beginning with Martinsville, fending off the long trip back home for several weeks with Rodney Childers returning. But eventually, the poor race results would lead to one poor qualifying session. It just is going to happen eventually. With a time of 30.529, Scott Riggs was dead last among the go-or-go homers and missed the historic Southern 500. After Scott Riggs disappointed in his return to Charlotte, he was ranked 37th in the driver's standings and well outside the NASCAR safety zone to be guaranteed a spot into the 43-car field. This team was a quart low, and like the number 9 team, there were no favors done in the Monday morning meetings, none at all. As for the 19 team, their penalty was also upheld by the NASCAR Commission. However, contrasting from the number 9 team, Elliott Sadler at least treaded water thanks to his weight loss regimen in the offseason, beginning the season with 3 top 20 finishes in the first 4 races and a 13th place rank in the points. Not terrible. The foundation, however, of a great season would start to crack from there. 6 finishes outside the top 20 in the next 8 races had Sadler on the edge, like he was before 2007, debating whether or not to eat that last slice of pizza. It was a challenge. And thus the silly season swirl was starting to hit this number 19 team. Rumors quickly hit the NASCAR garage that Matt Borland was going to become Sadler's crew chief after getting released from Michael Waltrip Racing. Ray Evernham commented on the 19 team and crew chief Josh Brown's performance by stating, "We've got to change something." So like the number 9 and number 10 teams, no sausage McGriddles were handed out at the 19 team meetings. For good reason though. Gotta keep Elliott Sadler away from his carnivore instinct and focused on the hunger, the starvation of not having won a race in forever. If having your entire race team struggle was not graying Evernham's hair, the pressure to find a long-term financial partner was. There were multiple candidates willing to put some big money into the race team, most notably George Gillette Jr., owner of the Montreal Canadiens NHL team and a part owner of England's Liverpool soccer team. Still, this was all bark no bite, as Ray Evernham still wanted to be sure that he had the right partner to achieve his goal of winning a NASCAR Cup Series championship. We're still talking. It's a matter of getting the right partner and getting the right timing. It's not about the money. I need the right partner. As the continual marathon known as the NASCAR Cup Series season hit the dog days of summer, Evernham would make some competitive changes as a Hail Mary to salvage the season. To the delight of his fanbase, Kasey Kahne looked to boost his performance in one critical area. No, it wouldn't involve the color blue. His white and red Dodge would run the 2006 Dodge nose for the Michigan race, and I think in that race he did some pretty big things with that nose 1 year ago. The front end helped, the front end of the car. Such a change left the back end of the car unbalanced, and Kahne would, as a result, struggle with loose conditions all weekend long, starting 36th and finishing 32nd. Such a performance on Father's Day 2007 spared them no mercy, not even from Wally D in the TNT booth.
And Kasey Kahne.
They probably think that was 100 years ago.
Today they think it was
06, you know what I mean?
His teammates running the current nose were even worse. Riggs finished 3 laps off the pace in 33rd, and Sadler finished 4 laps down in the 35th position. With just 11 races until the epic quest for the championship, none of the Evernham drivers were even in the top 20 in points, or within a race of the final chase spot held by Dale Earnhardt Jr. Compared to race 15 of the 2006 season, Kahne had a points rank differential of negative 25. Scott Riggs was at negative 13, and Elliott Sadler, compared to his trainwreck 2006 season at Robert Yates Racing, was even. As for the 19 team, Sadler's 21st place rank was substantially better than the 32nd place rank Jeremy Mayfield had 1 year prior, a razor-thin beacon of light for a dim Evernham Motorsports group. To begin the month of July, it was the same as usual. Evernham Motorsports and Dodge further struggled to keep up with the Hendrick Chevrolets and the Roush Fenway Fords. No top 10s, just one top 15 by Elliott Sadler at Sonoma, and back-to-back DNQs by Scott Riggs at Sonoma and New Hampshire. And without the win in your in format to try to go out and get the Hail Mary victory to bail out 5 months of abysmal performances, this 2007 season was officially a lost cause. 2 days after the race in New Hampshire, Elliott Sadler's crew chief Josh Brown resigned to return to the team's engineering department. Scott Dougal would take over as the interim crew chief for the Dodge dealers team. And Evernham would end up praising Brown for being a team player, stating, "Josh is better suited to help the organization as a whole from an engineering perspective and our efforts in that area." That was just one major change to Evernham Motorsports. Another was made after Evernham discovered critical aerodynamic and simulation software changes to the brand new car of tomorrow that were not applied to any of the team's actual race cars. Ray Evernham put the situation as bluntly as possible, so we basically spent half a year trying to build a foundation that did not exist. Technical director Eric Warren was put on leave after this discovery. Competition director Semi Johns took his place on an interim basis. The team itself would run the remainder of the Car Tomorrow races with the 2006 Dodge Charger nose. Such a disastrous and easily avoidable error had the team walking on eggshells, particularly with superstar Kasey Kahne, who was rumored to want to opt out of his contract to negotiate with DEI to drive the number 8. The car's sponsor, Anheuser-Busch, had Kahne high on their list to succeed a departing Dale Earnhardt Jr. as the face of Budweiser. The rumor was later denied, but that did not make Evernham feel any more relieved. Would you blame him? He heard Elliott Sadler almost every week last year deny that he was leaving Robert Yates Racing. "Oh, it's not gonna happen. I'm loyal to Robert Yates. I want to stay here forever." 1 year later, guess what? He's got his own office at Evernham Motorsports down the hall. Evernham Motorsports could not afford to lose their superstar driver by any stretch of the imagination. But with the comical errors within the organization, the abysmal performance of Dodge, and the silliness of NASCAR silly season, Evernham was on the verge of collapse, crumbling just like Robert Yates Racing just 1 year ago. It was painful to see, and this organization needed to repair its foundation, and quick. On August 6, 2007, after months of speculation and "we're almost done" talk, George Gillette Jr. officially partnered with Ray Evernham. It was set in stone, creating Gillette Evernham Motorsports. Evernham would remain a substantial owner and CEO of the team, with Gillette's portfolio of sports business experience expanding the team's financial and economic opportunities. Evernham, in the press release, was relieved. "This will allow me to focus on our racing operations and team performance, while the Gillette family will focus on our business operations. It certainly allows us to capitalize on our strengths and position GEM for long-term success, both on and off the track." Watkins Glen, the upcoming weekend, would be the team's first official race under the Gillette Evernham Motorsports banner, and of course, seeing how the 2007 has gone, the team would be prey for the next 2 weeks. Bristol, however, it would be a different story in a big way. Kasey Kahne, having led just 66 laps prior to the race, dominated the first race on Bristol's new surface, leading 305 laps in his McDonald's Dodge. But of course, the McFortunate legacy would continue, as it would see him finish second to Carl Edwards, but nonetheless, it felt like a win in the best race under the Gillette Evernham Motorsports banner. The performance would be the spark to reignite the charm in driver number 9. A 10th at Fontana the next week was the first time all season long that Kahne had back-to-back finishes inside the top 20. Kahne would end his disappointing 2007 season with a bit of a rally, earning 6 of his 8 top 10s in the second half and earning a 19th place finish in the final standings. A small victory in the short run. In the long run, however, it was a lost season and a paper tiger compared to the real tiger of a season that was 2006. Kasey Kahne went winless for the first time since his rookie season, scored career low numbers in top 5s, tied his career low in top 10s, and this would stand as his worst average finish in the Cup Series until he scored a 22.8 in his farewell 2018 campaign. Scott Riggs would continue his struggle of getting the 10 car back into the top 35 in owners points, earning 60 NQs, including an abysmal summer stretch that would keep him in the go-or-go-home zone for the rest of the year. His 2007 season ended up being his worst rank in the NASCAR Cup Series standings, his worst average finish, and his least amount of lead lap finishes. Riggs would also fail to lead a lap all season long, becoming the first driver in Evernham Motorsports history to not lead a lap while intending to run the full season. I say that not just because of the 6 DNQs, but also what would transpire in the final month of the season. On October 4th, Gillette Evernham Motorsports announced that Scott Riggs would not return to the James Rocco-owned number 10 for the 2008 season. To get a head start on preparations for the next season, Patrick Carpentier would race the number 10 car in the final 2 races, meaning that Scott Riggs would end his Evernham tenure at Texas, finishing a respectable 13th place finish. Finally, the Elliott Sadler number 19 team continued to dismally hover around the 23rd to 26th bracket in the final point standings for the remainder of the season. This led to even more changes, with Rodney Childers becoming the team's crew chief for Texas and the upcoming season. As for Elliott Sadler, despite the impressive weight loss this guy had, his on-track results were still the same, disappointing. For the first time since his 2000 season, Sadler failed to record a top 5. For Evernham Motorsports, he, as well as Scott Riggs, became the first 2 full-time drivers to not record a top 5 finish. Elliott Sadler, believe it or not, this is going to be hard to believe, he finished worse in the point standings than 2006. Considering the preseason expectations for Elliott Sadler, this was an absolute failure of a season, much like it was for Evernham Motorsports. Now overall, the season for Evernham, now Gillette Evernham Motorsports, had a few positive things. Kasey Kahne won some races for the team's Busch Series program. Now obviously this took the back seat to the new ownership, which despite the awful Cup performance in 2007, would secure Budweiser and Best Buy as primary sponsors for the 2008 campaign. Gillette Evernham Motorsports avoided a Robert Yates 2006 campaign of destruction, all while the team failed to back up their successful 2006 season and would solidify 2007 as the worst season in Evernham Motorsports history. So anyways, this is Nathan for NRF Productions signing out, and just remember, guys and gals, life's a beach and then you drive.